the all too familiar text found in the book of John, chapter 11. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sister sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. And when Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness, notice this sickness is not unto death. That's the promise. Somebody say the promise. That's the promise, Orlando, but what's the purpose? The purpose is for the glory of God, and that the Son of God may be glorified through it. I want you to understand something about disappointment. Oftentimes when we're disappointed, it's because somebody didn't do something the way we wanted them to do it. They didn't handle the situation the way that we would have appreciated, the way that we've insinuated. They know us. They know how we would want this to happen, and it didn't happen that way. The career didn't go that way. Our prayers weren't answered the way that we wanted them to be answered. This is a pretty intense situation hanging out right here. But I want you to understand that real love often doesn't look the way that we think it looks. It knows when to withhold things. It knows when to turn things a different direction. And what we're seeing in this particular let me ask you this. How often have we, maybe you can ask yourself that question, but I'll ask the crowd. How often do you question where Jesus is in your tightest of places? Think back over your life in your tough times and your times of disappointment, maybe times of emotional pain. Where's Jesus in those tight places? And what I think that we may miss is that he's wanting to develop something in us. He's wanting to develop our trust in him more than a desperation for him. Because if we're not careful, we'll become desperate for what we want him to do. Very easy to become desperate for that, and we think that's okay. But sometimes in life, he has a bigger picture that he's looking at. Sometimes in life, he's got a bigger story that he's working on. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Jesus has heard that his friend John is sick, and he stays away a couple more days. But when he decides to go, he says this, he is going that we may wake him up. Wow. So Jesus shows up to wake him up. Yes, healing is secondary. Healing is going to happen. That's something that can come naturally, but something that is not naturally is waking somebody up. Yes, and I want us in this woke generation to really wake up. Yes, so I want to talk to you about waking up in the presence of God. Amen. Thank you. You can be seated. Within stories like this, we often find people that are very disappointed. Thomas, no doubt, is disappointed. Please hear me. Thomas is more disappointed perhaps than almost anybody else in this book of John. Thomas is best known to you and I if you grew up in church. He's best known by what we perceive to be his doubt. But I want you to understand there's not doubt the way that we say doubt. In fact, if you were to read his story, Thomas is fearless. Thomas is passionate. And yeah, he's temporarily disappointed. He's a human being. But if we're not careful, we'll take these, Mike, these seasons of pain. And I think we've done it in Thomas's life. We've taken his that we know of one real season of pain, and we've blasted this man. And what you have to understand is that Thomas was not by nature a doubter. Thomas, we've been to India. Thomas is the man who single-handedly brings the gospel of Jesus Christ into India, and he turns that nation upside down. But he doesn't just stop there. He also took this gospel to China. We're not talking about in the 1900s. This man traveled the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. worked some of the greatest miracles, set entire nations on fire, but we've labeled him Doubting Thomas. Like, if that's the case, I wonder what else we've gotten wrong with our Christian stories. In verse number 16, Thomas has this to say. Jesus is wanting to go into Judea. He's got some things that he needs to accomplish. We know he also is going there to work primarily with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. But Thomas realizes the significance of this moment and says, Jesus, would you pause for a moment and let me counsel this group of people? He turns his head and looks at them and says, let's go too and die with Jesus. There's a group of people that say, listen, the last time that we went there, they were trying to stone you. You don't need to go there. Jesus has a plan and a purpose, and so Thomas knows this, and wherever Jesus is, Thomas doesn't want to be without him. Everybody else is reminding Jesus of when he was almost stoned. There was an attempt on your life, Christ, if you don't remember that. But here's Thomas's words. I'm going to change the script right before your very eyes. Thomas says, Jesus, if you're going, count me in. I refuse to allow you to die alone without me being by your side. This type of loyalty is very foreign in the American church. This type of passion, Mike, is very, very unique, especially in the American church. In fact, we are so intimidated by that, I think that we as Americans overall have looked for ways to trivialize what Thomas really was and who he was. Seems to me that it's more easy to, at least for me, those that I know, to identify others in their temporary seasons. That's just not what this gospel is about. Consider this, that Noah is drunk. He's already done something good for 120 years, but he's drunk now. But that's not his identity. David is a man after the heart of God, but we find him with multiple wives, cheating on them, cheating on his friend, taking his friend's wife, and then murdering his friend, but that's not his identity. Bartimaeus has a season, something like that. He's blind, but he doesn't stay that way. The woman with the issue of blood, she does have an issue of blood up until a certain point. But she devised a plan, pushed through the crowd, touched the hem of his garment. Why do we remember her the way? What we want to learn is what I want you to learn. I'll say it like this. Never let anybody name you according to the struggle. Let me say it this way. Never allow anyone to name you according to a struggling season in your life, because struggling seasons are just temporary. In fact, let me say this. The struggle is proof that you have not died. You're still alive. And as long as you're struggling, you're going to come out of this. That's not your identity. David said, though I pass through the valley of the shadow of death. That's a tough place to be passing through. You've just got to know that you're passing through. So truthfully, Thomas wasn't really in doubt. He was in pain. And sometimes I've learned this, sometimes that doubt and pain look like one another. They really, I can mistake pain for doubt, and I can mistake doubt for pain. But you must understand this, that God does not allow pain to discount your destiny. So don't allow it to identify your destiny. We're going to go somewhere. Think of this story and how closely that Thomas really walked near the Lord. Thomas walked so closely with him that he saw his passion up close. Thomas saw his prayer life. Thomas was there for at least four major life-changing miracles. Thomas observed every area of the Messiah's life, and he found what he wanted more than anything else in his life. Thomas is looking into the eyes of his beloved. He's looking into the eyes of the only man that he'll ever love like this. He's given up everything in life. And I personally believe, after reading this story a time or two in my life, that Thomas is really more impressed. In fact, he's so impressed by Jesus that he never asks him, who's going to sit on the right hand, Jesus? Who's going to sit on your left? Can I have the favored position? He's so enraptured and so in love with Jesus. Then when Jesus invites somebody else to the Mount of Transfiguration, Thomas doesn't have a question for him. You don't owe me any explanation as to why you didn't invite me on that mountain. I have found what I have looked for. And whatever I've got to do to stay close to you, that's good enough for me. Thomas is so, if you will, in love with Jesus, that he has grown to a place that he cannot imagine his life without him. He doesn't care who gets the attention as long as Jesus gives him attention. He wasn't asked, one more time, Thomas, would you like to come up to the Mount of Transfiguration? We're about to take a closer look at Moses. I'm about to show these boys a prophet, Moses. It's going to be incredible. Like if Thomas would have had that opportunity, he would have seized it, but Jesus doesn't mention that to him. Because just to be near Jesus is enough. No wonder why when Jesus thinks that he may die and Thomas thinks that Jesus may die, Thomas said, I'm ready to also. That's the kind of man he is.